actually do. Um, got it. All right. Oops.
Sorry about
Okay.
that, Claire. I had
No, it's okay. It scared me.
So we are recording from now on. I did mean to record
Okay.
this on our website afterwards. So
Yeah. No worries. Okay. Awesome. All right. So a little bit about the bells and whistles that we take on. We can work with the school district, big or small, and we can work with them whether they lease or they own their school buses. So we're pretty flexible. And when we come in and we work with the school district, we kind of aim to disrupt as little as possible. A lot of times school districts and transportation directors have been doing this and kind of have a system that works for them for many years. And so we want to make this a smooth, easy transition that everyone's happy about, because the more, successful, I think, electric school bus projects we get out in the field and working, and the more that we can show people that this is a reality. It's not just a pie in the sky, right? Like this is real technology that's here now and it works really well. I think is important. And so that's kind of what we aim to do. So we do this in 6 steps. It starts from planning all the way to working with school district from 10 to 15 years. So in planning, we go in with the school district, we map out all of their routes, their longest routes, their shortest routes. We look at their depot, we figure out where we work with their utility to figure out what kind of infrastructure we may need to build out to be able to provide electricity to the school buses and the charging infrastructure. So we plan everything, we finance the buses, the chargers, and all the other costs. So like I said, we front all of that upfront capital so that a school district isn't having to pay all of that up front. Third, we help manage the construction of the depot upgrades, which I think a lot of times is one of the scariest parts for a transportation director. Like I said, we're a lot of times having to go in there and break up physical concrete and make things a little bit messy, but we'll work with the local utility who's making those upgrades. We'll work with them to help manage that. Number 4, which is my favorite, which is that we train all the maintenance workers, the school bus drivers, the transportation director. We train everybody that they've already got on their team to work with these electric school buses. So we're not displacing any jobs. If anything, you get the extra advantage of having the Highland team on your side as well. And I have colleagues of mine who are on the more technical day-to-day aspect of this. And one of my colleagues, Sean, he's out at Montgomery County like every other week, just kind of, walking through the depot, talking to the maintenance workers, making sure everything's going okay for them, checking the charging infrastructure. So we're kind of all hands on deck style, which is, I think, pretty helpful, especially in these school districts that are taking on these projects. Now they're kind of, the front runners of this. And so I think having that extra backup is kind of good peace of mind. And then 5 and 6 kind of go into like I said, we like to sign with school districts from anywhere to 10 to 15 years. That longer time period allows us to give them lower annual costs because it's just spread out over more time. So over that time period, we help charge. So we help charge the buses during off-peak hours. If there's a vehicle to grid program available in the state, we'll help the school be involved with that. Our Beverly, Massachusetts project was involved in the V2G program that National Grid has this past summer, and they were able to make, I think, over like $8,000 in revenue. So we help with the charging, and then we help with the maintenance of the school buses. And if anything breaks down as far as a battery or a charging station, you name it, we cover all of those costs. So it's a full package service. It sounds almost too good to be true. But there are a few ways that we kind of ensure that this is going to be either budget neutral or cost savings compared to what a school district is already paying to maintain a diesel fleet. So, yep.
This is Jacob real quick. I think your presentation might be paused. I'm seeing the home slide right now.
Oh, no.
No, I think it might have been when I cut in.
Okay, hold on. Let me, oh, you're totally right. It's like, okay, there we go. I was presenting to myself. Okay. So basically, no, it's totally okay. So I'll just go back for a second. This was the 6 steps that I was just walking through so that you can kind of see it's the planning, financing, building, training, charging, maintaining. but pretty straightforward. So this is actually my favorite slide. So I'm glad we fixed that before now. This shows the stacked savings, and essentially, like I was saying, we like to offer, or we offer a subscription price. So that's an annual price that the school district is paying between 10 to 15 years. And that we either try to get budget neutral or cost savings. And by stacking a bunch of different revenue streams or saving streams together, that's how we can achieve that with the school district. So you'll see these here on the right side of the screen, these stack savings. So that's first off, multi-year contracts. Like I said, 10 to 15 years, spreading it out over a longer time period helps with that. Any V2G revenue that's available in the state, we offer assistance on that because that's kind of a new territory for school districts. So V2G revenue, grants and future incentives. So this one is really cool. And so any local, state, or federal incentives, so like the incentives that are available through NYSERDA or the ones that are coming down through the EPA program, we would work with the school district, and given their level of comfortableness with applying for these programs, we would either apply on their behalf or we would help them apply, and then anything that they were awarded, we would wrap into the cost that we're charging them. And a few more things: tax depreciation and volume pricing just come with us being the largest purchaser of the school buses. We can drive that price down, and we actually just a few weeks ago signed a commitment with Thomasville Buses to provide us with lower contract prices and provide our schools with lower contract prices over a set period of time. And so that'll help us and our customers get the lowest prices, but it'll also, we're hoping, affect just the overall school bus market in general. I will just make a note there that I've been getting this question a lot since that came out. We're brand agnostic, so we can work with any brand. All of the major manufacturers of school buses, traditional school buses, have an electric model. And then in addition to that, there are electric school bus exclusive manufacturers. We work with all of them, and that goes into what I was saying before, which is that we like to disrupt as little as possible. And so a lot of times when we go into a school district, the school district will already have a preferred make and model of school bus that they are used to working with and prefer to work with. So we can work with whoever. The last two things aren't obvious when you're talking about electric school buses, which is just maintenance and fuel savings. Obviously the fuel is a little less dependent on what's going on in the world, which I think we've seen a good illustration of the past month or so. And then the maintenance savings, these buses just have a lot less moving parts than traditional buses. So that's kind of how we make the too good to be true package that I just presented in the 6 steps. Like I said, either budget neutral or cost savings. So I'll just wrap up here with a few case studies, and I've mentioned them briefly before, but the first is Beverly, Massachusetts. Our office in Beverly actually overlooks the school that these buses are at, which is kind of cool. And it also allows us to be even more hands-on than we normally are, because we'll just send people running across the street to help with their charging infrastructure or whatever they need help with. And the thing I like to note about this one is that it's a relatively small fleet that is about 30 buses, and they signed with us and they wanted to electrify 2 buses just to kind of just feel it out, and they love them so much that we're going to work with them now to electrify their full fleet of 30. So it's a really small fleet, and I think it's a good illustration of how we can work with school districts of all sizes. And another thing is that we future-proofed this depot whenever we were building it out. So we installed charging infrastructure for 24 buses, even though we were only doing 2, and we do that so that we have to break concrete as little as possible. And this is something that we kind of practice across the board on all of our projects, is an aspect of future-proofing. And then the last thing I'll note is that obviously this is the project where I mentioned the participation in the V2G program that National Grid had, which I think is really exciting and a really a good illustration of how V2G can work. I think V2G is another one of those pie in the sky kind of ideas. People can't really always wrap their head around it, but it's cool when you can actually put a dollar figure on the amount that they received. And then this is our largest project and the largest in the US across the board. And this is in Montgomery County, Maryland. It's actually right in my backyard in DC. I go over to the Bethesda depot all the time, and it's really cool to see the line of charging infrastructure and all the big school buses plugged in. And so this is a fleet of about 1,500 buses. It's a huge fleet, and they have over 209 schools, and I think they have about 5 depots. And so they are looking to fully electrify their fleet over 12 years. In the first 4 years, we'll be delivering 326 buses. Right now, I think we have around 25 charging stations and I think over 10 buses there. And just a couple weeks ago, they actually started taking kids to and from school and just operating like normal buses. So that's super exciting. And also, if anyone's ever in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, always feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to have folks come out and to the Bethesda depot and see these babies in action. A few weeks ago, the WRI team came out and they got to go on a ride on the electric school bus and see all the charging infrastructure. So anytime any Clean Cities Coalition members want to come out from any state chapter, we're happy to host. So I'll just finish up here with a few things about the why now, which is really just the federal and state incentives. I think the stars are kind of aligned right now. And I think, fingers crossed as we move forward, school districts will kind of have to go electric. And I think in New York, especially, that point rings true, which is that, with this mandate that the governor has proposed, and that will likely be passed by tomorrow with both the one house budgets. School districts really aren't going to have a choice but to go electric, and now's the time to do it, because in addition to a state like New York that already has funding available, and hopefully we'll have more through the budgets that are passed, we've got all this funding coming down from the EPA on the federal side. So I in every conversation that I'm having with school districts or stakeholders, whoever it may be, I'm just urging people to understand the urgency in the right possibility of electrifying right now. And I won't go over the rest, which is that I think I kind of mentioned it. All of the major OEMs have electric models available. This is not a new technology. It's new relative to diesel buses, right? But it's actually, they've been testing electric school buses for a good while now, and there's a reason that all of the major diesel manufacturers have electric models, is that they're ready to use now. So the technology is there, the money is there, so it's kind of hard to argue against going electric now. And with folks like Highland and other companies that do the same thing that we do, there's a lot of options around the financing, and there's a lot of flexibility that's available that I don't think school districts always know about. So I would just urge y'all wearing your Clean Cities Coalition hats to just, like I said, drive home the fact that we need to do this now. Now's the time to do it. And I think the biggest thing that y'all can do, and the biggest thing that I try to do in my role in community engagement, is just educate people on electric school buses. I think that's the most important thing. So with that, I'll end. I know it's a lot to cover. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll also put my email in the chat if y'all want to email me any questions afterwards. But thank you.
Thanks, Claire. This is Jacob. That's great information. Want to open it up to anyone. If anyone on the call has any questions for Claire, feel free to unmute and chime in. David, so we've got David Morton here. He's in the office. David, go ahead.
I'm not in wheeled fleets, I'm in floating fleets, but what is V2G?
So V2G, great question, and I should never assume that everyone knows all of the various acronyms that we have in the electrification world, but V2G is vehicle to grid. And so that essentially would allow a school bus, which is what I like to describe as a large rolling mobile battery, to, when it's not being used. So over the summer, you can plug it into the charger, and then it can send that power back onto the grid. So in the summer, school buses aren't being used, they're just sitting idle. So an electric school bus can kind of help during peak demand when people are pumping their AC during the summer. So it's actually, school buses offer, I think, the best use case for vehicle to grid or V2G.
Thank you, that's great.
Claire, I kind of have a follow-up to that. Do most of the major manufacturers, the models available, are those all capable of vehicle to grid right now?
So I'm not exactly sure on that, but I want to say that they're probably not all of them. I think a lot of them are, and if they aren't already, that's something that they're working towards. And I think also important to note is that it's just as important for the school bus to be capable as it is for the charger that a school installs to be one of those bi-directional flow chargers. And I think that all of the ones, like I said, we're future proofing right now. And so I think all of the ones that we're building out are either already capable of that or are capable of being upgraded to that, so that when, and hopefully more states start implementing these V2G programs, that's something that school districts are able to do, because I think that's a really important aspect of that value stream.
Right. I mean, it's definitely something that you don't really get with the diesel bus. So it's,
Right.
you know, a whole new kind of model that people aren't really thinking about yet. So it's good to point
Yeah,
out.
exactly. It's definitely something that's not even an option on the diesel bus. And I think the good thing is, it's like, even if it's not available in a state now, we can still talk to it and say that hopefully it will be down the line. And it's not like it's not by not having it now we're taking anything from them, because like you said, that's not even anything that that's a possibility now. So it's just a kind of an added bonus.
Right. Any other questions?
Yes, Paul Daniels from New York Bus Sales. We're the Bluebird dealer for essentially all of New York, with the exception of the greater New York City metropolitan area. Claire, I'm wondering what success you've had in other states in terms of utilizing the VW funding, because I know here in New York, some of the limitations we've seen for school districts are, number one, they're being penalized for having cleaned up their act long ago, because we don't have enough of the old polluting diesel buses to use as the sacrificial lambs. But number two, the requirement for a disadvantaged community effectively shuts out the better part of 90% of the school districts that we have in upstate New York. And you know, recognizing that a high tide raises all boats, I have to believe that if we're cleaning the air in one area, it's going to drift by virtue of the wind into another. I'm wondering if you've run into anything similar anywhere, and if you have, what things you've done to try to overcome it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think with VW funds, obviously there's a lot of intricacies there, and different states adopt it in different ways. So I think I can speak to VW funds, but also I think it's important more broadly, as these VW funds, we're seeing kind of states come to the last funds that they may have since they've been out for a while, and we're looking at the funds that are coming through the EPA. We want to just, with all of these programs that are being developed or have been developed, ensure that, like you said, I think you're speaking to the scrappage requirements that some of these programs may have. We would just urge folks to not penalize schools, like you said, for having cleaned up their fleet a while ago or a little more recently, whichever it may be. So scrappage requirements is one that we're super aware of, and we're actually working with the EPA right now, and we're regularly talking to NYSERDA as well, just around all these requirements around scrappage. And I think that, and I can't speak to the VW fund specifically in New York, but I think, Paul, that you'll see with these EPA funding mechanisms coming out. The first tranche is out in April, and the second tranche will be and the first tranche is a lottery system, and the second tranche will be a competitive grant program. And I think that those will be, just given the sheer amount of money that's included in those, I think will be a lot more inclusive to all school districts. There will definitely be some aspects of it that are geared towards the low income and disadvantaged communities, which I think it's always important to have a set aside. But I think that you're totally right. It's, you know, at the end of the day, it's important that we're all cleaning up the air that we breathe. So hopefully that's helpful. But I guess just on Highlands front, we're super aware of all of those requirements that can sometimes be kind of a chokehold and prevent school districts from being able to take advantage of them. And we're kind of actively working on all fronts, state and federal, to kind of knock some of those barriers down so that everyone can take advantage of the available funds.
Well, I appreciate that. Just to follow up, have you had occasion to do anything for a district that did not qualify for any kind of grant money? And if so, how does your program work in terms of containing costs for them?
Yep. Yeah. So I can't speak to a specific district where that's been the case. I think a lot of times we will work with a district to find at least one stream of funding that's available. Obviously, that's not always the case, and we may come up at some point soon on a school district where that is the case. And I think I think we would just try to capitalize more on the other value streams that I spoke to. So our volume pricing and the fuel savings and all of that. There are, and just in the spirit of being candid, there are some financial cases where it just doesn't work. New York, actually, up until the governor's announcement of expanding the lease term, was a no-fly zone for us, because the 5-year lease, the lease limitation was actually making the cost so high that we couldn't honestly tell a school district that going electric and working with us was going to save them money compared to a diesel. But now with the governor's lease term extension, she proposed 10 years, the Assembly proposed 10 years, and the Senate proposed a 15-year. We're advocating for a 15-year. Now with that lease term extension, that's one thing that's also gonna make New York pretty appealing to us, is that we can honestly, Paul, make the statement that we will be helping school districts save money, or at least not spend more than they already are.
Thank you.
I think, Claire, you've got another comment or question in the chat from Steve.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Steve, and that's a good catch. And EVSB, as in electric vehicle school bus funding, is there through NYSERDA, through their I always forget the acronym, the heavy vehicle incentive program. I think it is through NYSERDA. There is money there. On the charging infrastructure side, I'm not as attuned, and you may be right that the Charge Ready is, yeah, okay, thank you, TVIP. So you may be totally correct that the Charge Ready program is not available. The only thing I could say to that is that hopefully through what's approved ultimately in the budget tomorrow, there will be more funds allocated to both the charging infrastructure side of things and also the actual school bus itself.
Great, thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right, I'm hearing and seeing none.
I don't have a question. Hi guys, this is Kate Carlio from National Grid. I don't have a question, but I will just take this moment to kind of talk about National Grid and just introduce myself and let people know that if anyone doesn't already have contacts at National Grid and wants to talk about electrification or in any way that Grid can help, it can be either me or I can get you to the right person. We have people working on fleets and school bus electrification who I think are already talking regularly with Highland. So that's going forward, and National Grid is obviously a big part of electrifying your vehicles or your fleets, and we have certain incentives for certain things that can kind of go along with other things that are coming down the pike. So just letting you know we're here. I'm here if anyone needs me.
Awesome. Yeah, I think actually, Kate, my colleague is having a call with one of your colleagues right now. So we are definitely
right now,
always.
yes. I know. I heard the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say we are talking National Grid, and I think Kate's really right. And this goes for all of the utilities and all the states that we work with. I think that sometimes people assume that they don't fully understand Highland's model, and they assume that we're kind of at odds with the utility, but actually we work really, really well. And there's no reason that we shouldn't work really, really well with the utility. They play a really important role in getting the charging infrastructure to the school buses. So I think it's always exciting when we can regularly chat with the local utility. So thanks for all of y'all's work, Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I just want to point out, Kate threw her contact information in the chat for anyone who might be interested. All
Great.
right.
Well,
So
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I'm happy to wrap up. I don't see any more questions now, but like I said, my email is also in the chat. So please do feel free to email me with any questions you have now. And also if you're just in your day-to-day running into any school districts that maybe need a little bit more education on electric school buses more generally, I'm happy to do that. Since I'm on the market dev team and not on the sales team, I don't have to be a salesperson, which I'm happy about. So I can my job is just around electric school bus education, and I can speak to Highlands model. And I think it's a great illustration of one way that school districts can fund these things. But ultimately, I'm just here to educate. So please do think of Highland and me as a resource as you guys are out there in New York actually having these conversations with folks. And with that, I will stop talking, but I do really appreciate that being given the time to talk to y'all today.
yeah, not a problem. We appreciate having you. And I'll just say, I have the slide deck. You don't mind if I send that out to the group with the meeting minutes?
Yep,
So-
totally fine. Yeah, I'll put it in a PDF form, and I'll send you the PDF of it, and then I'd be glad for you to share it with folks.
Very good. That would be great. Thank you, Claire.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I will try to share my screen and move back to our presentation. Second here. All right, so Stephen, are we're good right now?
Good to go.
Okay. Okay, so with that, we will continue on to the next portion of the meeting. So I'm just going to go over real quick some updates for what we've got planned at Clean Communities here for 2022. So we've got kind of three main, we call them subtasks, and this is really all under work that we get designated to do by the Department of Energy through our Clean Communities contract. Each year we kind of have a number of, we'll say buckets of kind of high level types of work that we can do. There is a handful that's really kind of like basic data collection that we do for the Department of Energy. That's kind of, we'll say internal or, not public facing. But then these, we call them subtasks, are more of our flexible work and opportunities to kind of reach out and work with you guys as stakeholders and the public and the community to do a number of different kind of outreach and education events. Each year we can choose from about 5 or 6 different tasks. This year we've chosen to do work in these kind of 3 primary buckets: alternative fuel stakeholder listening sessions, fuel technology outreach and education events, and targeted fleet coaching and technical assistance. So I'm just going to go a little bit more into detail on what we've got planned for this year. So our alternative fuel stakeholder listening sessions, some of you that have kind of been involved with the coalition might have seen these come up before. This is something that we've done a handful of over the past few years. These are, typically, we'll say private, not public facing sessions where we're intended to collect thoughts on actual real world operations of alternative fuel vehicle fleets. The reason why we kind of keep them private and not public facing is because the real goal is to hear kind of the good, bad, and the ugly about a particular fuel or technology or vehicle type. So we really want the participants to feel comfortable giving us honest feedback without, potentially a manufacturer or a dealership maybe kind of influencing what they think that they should be saying. So with that, in the past few years, we've done these with a handful of fleets, but really kind of primarily targeting electric vehicles on the heavy duty and light duty side. So we've been trying to kind of get something going, looking at propane fleets. And so this is something that we tried to get going last year, but we're going to try to revisit it this year because we didn't really get the participation that we were hoping for. So the first listening session is going to be, hopefully with propane school bus fleets. This is something that we know that we have a handful of propane school bus fleets in the region. And I do have kind of periodic contact with them, and we have gotten kind of mixed reviews on how they feel that the propane is, operating. Have heard from some that they're maybe transitioning to gasoline buses because they can still see some emissions benefits over diesel, but they're just kind of easier to operate and acquire compared to the propane. So this is something that we want to dig further into and really kind of, get some feedback from them on how maybe we could help with the, adoption of more propane buses. And really, I think I forgot to mention a lot of this, the data that we collect in these sessions, we're able to bring that back to our Department of Energy partners, where that data is kind of stripped of all contacts and names, but they take that information, like I said, the good, bad, and the ugly, and try to bring that back directly to the manufacturers with, no contact information attached. They don't know necessarily who's giving that information, but the idea being that in future iterations of that technology, the manufacturers can work to improve it. So, like I said, we tried this last year and didn't get a lot of participation, but this year I'm hoping to work with some of our local propane industry experts to kind of garner a little bit more interest in this event, and hopefully get at least 3 or 4 current propane school bus fleet operators in a room to go over their experiences with the fuel, things that they like, things that they don't like, and hopefully get some information back from them on how we could advance propane technology in the region. So that's the first event that we're planning, hopefully looking to have that in the next 2 months or so. Don't have a date yet on the calendar, but like I said, we've got a couple partners that we're going to be working with, and hopefully get that on the books. But like I said, so these are a little bit more internal, so not necessarily something that we may be sending out a public email blast on. The next listening session that I'd like to hold this year is for barriers to EV fleet adoption. In the past, the Department of Energy has been very clear that these listening sessions should be focused on fleets that have already adopted alternative fuels. But I think since they know that some coalitions have been doing this for a handful of years now, the number of fleets available in all these regions are kind of dwindling that they've already talked to of already transitioned fleets. So they're allowing us to open this up to fleets that are interested in alternative fuels, but maybe haven't been able to take that leap into adopting them. And obviously here in New York, electrification is a hot topic, and I know that we have quite a few stakeholders on our list and on this call, I'm sure, that are very interested in kind of furthering their adoption of electric vehicles, but haven't really been able to make that a reality at a large scale. And I think that this would be good to get a lot of those folks in the room and really understand and dig deeper into what's holding it back. Obviously we hear the funding available and incentives, when they're there, it's great, and it really helps move the needle. But when they're not, that obviously slows things down. But when we kind of get into further conversations, sometimes with folks, it's apparent that sometimes the money isn't the end all be all. So hoping that a listening session like this could bring some more of those barriers to light, and by passing those back to the Department of Energy, hopefully it allowed them to work with some of those manufacturers to overcome some of those barriers and advance the technology. So that's under our listening sessions. That's what we're planning for the year. Be happy to hear any feedback if anyone is, obviously if you're interested in participating, if you have, any experience in these two areas, or if, you think that there might be another listening session that would be helpful for us, feel free to, either chime in or send me an email if you have any ideas. We're always looking for other options. The next task is our fuel technology outreach and education events, and this is really, maybe we'll say the bread and butter of our coalition, at least in years past before COVID kind of limited us to webinar type events. But these are kind of just our typical, tabling at events, promoting the fuels, providing, pamphlets and information on available incentives and connecting folks with, industry experts and best practices. So, this year we've got a handful of kind of projects on the list right now, but this could always change, and we can add and adopt new events as the year goes on. First event was actually held yesterday. We had a webinar in coordination with the 5 other New York State Clean Cities coalitions to provide information on the bipartisan infrastructure law funding that's going to be coming available, hopefully by the end of this year. So like I said, we hosted this yesterday with other New York State coalitions as well as New Jersey. Actually, we had presentations from the New Jersey coordinator who went into detail on what the next steps for the bipartisan infrastructure law funding was. Essentially, kind of at a high level, if you missed that webinar, right now, states are working on electric vehicle planning documents that are due to Federal Highway by August 1st. And at that point, those documents will be used to provide guidance on the spending of this, the money that's going to be coming down from the infrastructure law. Right now, it seems like at least the first bit of that funding is going to be spent primarily around designated alternative fuel corridors, which in our region is I-87 and I-90. So, really locations that are about a mile off, excuse me, host locations that are about a mile off interstate exits are really going to be the first, first pass to get access to this funding. So again, we don't know a whole lot about it until these plans come down from the state. But hopefully more we'll know more in August or September once these plans are released. The webinar also included a couple presentations from Department of Energy folks that presented on some of available EV planning tools that they've created that are going to help communities and fleets alike kind of map out where some of these this infrastructure might be designated, which then could allow hosts to kind of better understand that and be prepared when that funding becomes available. Second event that we've got on the calendar right now is our Drive Electric Earth Day event. We're currently partnering with the Sustainable Albany on an event on April 23rd. This is going to be in downtown Albany at the Westminster Church. It's going to be from 11 to 3 in the afternoon. That's a Saturday. So right now we've got locked in a handful of local representatives from the City of Albany, Albany Parking Authority, CDTA, and also a handful of local EV drivers that are going to have their vehicles there to show off. And we're also hoping to have a couple dealerships there to have vehicles for ride and drive opportunities. So what we're looking to do with this event is really kind of just have a, one of our first outdoor events since 2020. Hopefully it's going to be a nice day. We're hoping to just have a lot of conversation on electric vehicles, as well as a couple speaking opportunities from our local representatives to highlight kind of the work that's being done at the municipal level to advance EV adoption. So, if anyone on this call, maybe we've missed you, or if you'd be interested in having a table there or participating in some way, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to have more participants than less. So keep an eye out for some updates on that. Next, we're hoping to have kind of a similar event, but at a little larger scale. This is something that we've kind of been thinking about, for a little bit now. Looking to have kind of a Capital District EV Day where, we kind of have a large scale event, potentially partnering with, a farmer's market or something like that, where we can really draw some attention and really kind of have an all-day event where we can have electric vehicles on site for people to drive and get the feel for them, learn about them, hopefully have some OEM charging manufacturers there as well, to really kind of provide as much education as we can about electric vehicles. It is something that we get a lot of questions about. Once funding is available, as Steve mentioned earlier, unfortunately, a lot of the infrastructure funding through New York State has kind of dwindled. There is still funding for light duty EVs and heavy duty vehicles as well. But so this is something that hoping to work probably with a third-party consultant to really make sure that we can host a great event and get a good turnout. So something that we're looking really in the early stages of planning right now, but hopefully have that kind of late summer and fall potentially. Next event, multimodal alternative fuel vehicles. So as our EV fair is kind of going to be focusing on light duty vehicles, most likely. This is something that we have heard from some stakeholders on, what's out there for freight activities, multimodal hub, and we want to really kind of get a handful of manufacturers together, potentially in person with vehicles here on site, maybe in coordination with one of our stakeholder meetings, but really take a deeper dive into what's available for alternative fuel forklifts or yard trucks, off-road kind of construction equipment potentially, and really looking at not fuel specific, but what's out there for electric, propane, hydrogen vehicles. Because when we kind of get into that space that's off the light duty on-road vehicles, kind of a lot of other options present themselves, but they may not always be as obvious or out there as kind of the typical electric vehicle manufacturers that we see on the light duty vehicle side of things. So hoping to put together an event like that, like I said, potentially maybe an in-person event that's with a future quarterly stakeholder meeting. I think at the office here would be a good opportunity for that. And then finally, New York State Truck Voucher Incentive Program outreach. We talked a little bit about the truck voucher program during Claire's presentation. This is something that we're going to be working with NYSERDA to, kind of act as an arm of NYSERDA to provide more information on that program to interested fleets. It's something that we've had presentations on here in the past, but as it's pointed out, some of the criteria can get complicated for getting qualified to participate in the program. So we're going to be working with NYSERDA to kind of get some more detailed presentations that we can provide to interested fleets kind of in a one-on-one setting. And we'd be happy to maybe talk further with anyone on this call that's interested. I will point out that I think late last year, they did tweak some of those scrappage requirements that allows fleets to then, if they don't have a vehicle on hand that meets that 2009 model year or engine year or older, there is opportunity for a fleet to go purchase a vehicle that qualifies from another fleet that they can then use to scrap for that new electric vehicle incentive. So, that is a program that's kind of ever changing, or program criteria are kind of making small tweaks. So we're going to be working with NYSERDA to make sure that anyone who's interested has the latest information on that. And then the final kind of subtask that we're working under is our fleet coaching and technical assistance. This is an area where we don't really have anything locked in on the books right now. And we'd be happy to hear from any fleet that's interested, any of you on the call, or feel free to pass this along. If anyone is looking for kind of extra hands on, looking further into alternative fuels, we do have a little bit of staff time that we can promote or help devote to that. So things that we can do is alternative fuel total cost of ownership analysis, where we can take a look at an alternative fuel vehicle that you might be interested in versus a gasoline or diesel vehicle, and kind of map out what those costs will be over a 10 or 15 year lifespan of the vehicle, and take into account maintenance and fuel use and all those things, to really get a true picture of not just the two purchase price comparison, but what that vehicle is going to cost over the long run. We can also help in EV planning and development guidance. If you're a municipality or kind of an agency that's looking into what it might take to do a wholesale fleet transition, we can help with some of the legwork on that. And then also just providing kind of that industry expertise and best practices. Not that we always have that, but hopefully we're, we can always look and try to provide contacts with other fleets in the region, or the Northeast or across the country that might have already made a transition to a vehicle that you might be interested in. So if any of that sounds interesting, please feel free to reach out to me. We're always happy to see how we can help, and really kind of move the needle on that alt fuel adoption. So that's kind of the end of the our contract work. If anyone had any questions or wanted to chime in on that, feel free to do that now. And then I'm going to be kind of moving into a couple other CDT or CDCC updates in the next few slides. So Stephen, did anything come into the chat there? All good? Okay. So quickly, this is our, wanted to go over our annual reporting. This is something that we talked about back in December as well. And I think a lot of you have already kind of provided me with some of the data. But in case you haven't been looped in on this. So each year, Capital District Clean Communities, we reach out to all of our stakeholders and local fleets to collect data on alternative fuel use, which we're then able to provide to the Department of Energy, and they can come up with some regional emissions reductions based on the alternative fuels used in the region. This data is not shared with the public in any way. It's really just used for our own internal reporting and reporting at the Department of Energy level. And it allows them to kind of roll up the benefits of Clean Communities coalitions, not only here at the local level, but nationwide, which helps them kind of secure our funding for future rounds as well. So right now, I've sent out a handful of emails and contacted our individual fleets, but you might see these kind of requests come across our listserv. We have to submit the data to Department of Energy on the 16th. So I'm asking for any final data points coming to us by next Friday, the 8th. So I think I'm probably send out a follow-up email tomorrow, but I know many of you on the call have already provided this to me. So thank you for that, and no need to worry further. But maybe if you haven't seen this yet, if you are operating an alternative fuel vehicle and you haven't heard from me, and you want to be included on this this data report, feel free to reach out and let me know. We can always include new fleets to the list. Other Clean Communities news, just want to touch on a couple things here. First off, I want to highlight our solar cell electric boats. So that's David, who we have here in the office, recently received the first U.S. Coast Guard certification for a 100% solar electric boat. So I wanted to shout out David on that and let the group know that we're actually in the process of working with Motor Week, which is a PBS automobile show that airs every week that Clean Communities at the national level kind of has a partnership with, where we do short segments that highlight alternative fuel vehicles. So we've reached out to them and gotten confirmation that we're going to be working with David to do a short segment this summer to highlight his boat fleet. I don't know, did you want to chime in with anything, David, on that? And you don't have to, but I figured I'd give you a chance since we're talking about it.
I'd love to briefly. The first thing is that the current issue of Professional Boat Builder says that that boat, 100% solar electric, is the greenest commercial boat in the United States. I also want to thank Claire for what she said. Electric boats are just like electric cars in all those good respects. And we carry our charging infrastructure on our roof. So charging is built in. The second thing is that we have 3 brand new 24-foot boats coming into our fleet this summer. And the last but not least is that last summer, because of COVID, I had time and we took the first ever 1,400-mile solar powered trip from the state of Washington up to Alaska. So we're making waves. Thank you.
Thank you. I also I guess I want to follow up on that too, so it's something that we'd like to do a little bit more is working, not only with Motor Week, but also I think we're going to be trying to publish a little more regularly a local Clean Communities kind of newsletter where we want to highlight local fleets, really kind of make sure that people in the area and the region are, make it known that alternative fuels exist here, and we want to give credit where credit is due to our stakeholders who are adopting that. So just a point of, we want to be try to do more things like this in the future in highlighting our stakeholders. So hopefully that Motor Week segment goes well, and we can get that filmed and pushed out to all our stakeholders later this summer. So looking forward to that. Also, just wanted to point out that we have 2 new CDTC staff members who are also going to be working on the Clean Community side of things. We have Chaim Simon, a new transportation planner with CDTC, who's here in the office doing the meeting minutes today. Chaim recently graduated from the University of Washington in Seattle and joined us back in February. And then we also have Stephen Maples, who is on the video side of things today, keeping an eye on the chat and making sure things go smoothly. Stephen's going to be our new public participation specialist. So working on all things CDTC, but also Clean Communities, and hopefully helping us spruce up our website and social media accounts so we can make sure everyone gets as much information as possible on all of our events and all things alternative fuels. Stephen has been working with MTA for the past handful of years and moved up to the region. I think it was back in February as well. So welcome, Stephen and Chaim. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to any of our members on the call for any other news around the table. So if anyone wants to chime in with any new stations or vehicle updates, feel free.
Thanks, Jacob. I can give you a quick airport update if anyone's interested.
Steve, that'd be great.
Steve here. How you doing? Greetings from Albany Airport, up in the terminal, 3rd floor. We're up to 32 level 2 electric charging stations available free of charge to the public in our new South Garage, also long-term parking, and also at our executive terminal for all the corporate fleet parties and their Teslas down at Millionaire. And we're hoping to expand these level 2 stations from 32 to 54 this year, pending any incentive funding I can rustle up. We were into the Charge Ready New York program, which expired abruptly. We thought it would continue, but it went from half funded to zero funded in less than a month. So we're short about $100,000 to get the next 20 spaces constructed to bring us up to 52. And these are, we can say they're partially fueled by photovoltaics. We've got 160 PV panels on the roof of the terminal and garage pedestrian bridge. So that's a nice option to know that some of the power for your car is coming from the sun. Let's see, I'll be asking Dave, Captain Borton about solar cell. I'm very excited to hear that news, and I'd love to help him in any way we can. I live on the Erie Canal, and we're looking forward to seeing his solar fleet out there. The airport has property on the river also. So are you selling the solar sailboats, Captain Borton?
Yes, we're taking orders now on a 24-foot.
Give me a ballpark estimate. What is it, 100 grand, or what are you looking for?
Well, that's the order of magnitude. We're going to Maine to settle the price next week.
All right. Very excited. That's definitely a reason to celebrate, and congratulations on your success and growth. Hope we see these solar boats worldwide shortly. Good. Anyway, that's the news from the airport. We're almost back to pre-pandemic levels. We're still missing the business travelers and the international travelers. So we're at least 85% of where we were in 2019 and seeing some growth. So we're doing our best to continue to promote alternative fuel vehicles. We still have our CNG dedicated fleet of shuttle buses, and the CNG station is there. CNG is a good bridge fuel. We did a pilot project, the hydrogen internal combustion engines here with supervisory vehicles for CTA, and the pickup trucks were hydrogen ICE vehicles. So we have pioneered, and we're looking forward to continue to help lead transition from petroleum fuels to cleaner, greener alternatives. So that's my quick airport update. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, everyone.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Very informative as always. And I'll keep an eye out for any of those EVSC incentives for you. I know you've been searching hard for that. So we've got our fingers crossed too that hopefully something new pops up at the state level. Anybody else want to share any current updates?
Just a quick update from the university. Two main things we're working on right now primarily are we actually are engaged in the New York State Truck Voucher Incentive Program. We're on the verge of purchasing an electric trolley for our university, primarily for admissions visitors and sporting events and that type of thing. So we're well on our way to taking advantage of that funding. Yeah, slightly complicated. It's been a grind the last few months, but we're closer than we've ever been. So we anticipate having that vehicle probably somewhere over the next 6 to 8 months. Once the paperwork and the funding is provided, really it's just a point of building the vehicle. So with a lot of vehicle manufacturing right now, there is some delays, and just understand the trolley, it's really just a bus chassis built up to be a trolley body. So we are very close to that, and I would imagine that based on my chats with NYSERDA and the like, that we are only probably a week or two away from finalizing that agreement. So yes, it did take a little time, but we're very excited to move forward that. And secondly, construction has begun on our campus as it relates to CDTA's bus rapid transit route, which will be traveling through the University of Albany campus. So a lot of our interior roadways have begun the process of being widened, and unfortunately some trees were were taken down on campus. We'll be replacing more trees than we took down, but it was published locally that we just, cut down 100 plus trees without the full scope of what was occurring. But so really, obviously the CDTA BRT is a limited line that will go from downtown Albany to Crossgates Mall. And a main component of that is stopping at our new E-Tech building on the Harriman campus, as well as cutting through the interior of campus, making it a more pedestrian and transit friendly pathway. Essentially, we're as part of the thoroughfare, walkways, greenery, landscaping designs, traffic calming devices. So although it is cutting the campus in half, it is to one of our goals at the university certainly is to minimize make the interior of campus more pedestrian, bicycle, transit friendly as far as larger vehicles versus your individual single occupancy vehicle being on the interior of campus. So those are our two big projects right now, helping CDTA with the BRT line cut through our campus and obtaining the electric trolley through the truck voucher incentive program.
That's great. Thanks, Jason. It's good to see a local fleet that's able to take advantage of the voucher program. We've had a lot of discussion on that, and it seems like the scrappage is holding a lot of people back. So it's good to see it come to fruition here. Be excited to get that on campus eventually. Anyone else want to chime in this morning?
Hi, this is Tara from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission.
Hey, Tara.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm a Clean Energy Community Coordinator for the Clean Energy Communities Program and the Climate Smart Communities Program, which are two programs that support municipalities in making the transition. So there's a few actions related to clean fleets and EV charging stations and those types of things. And they basically, sorry. Basically, they can get points in those programs, and they can leverage the points towards more grants that can get them match-free funding to purchase maybe more electric vehicles and things like that. So we've seen a lot of success recently, a lot of communities interested in kind of developing, either installing more charging stations if they've already installed them, installing them for the first time, thinking about fleet transition planning. And it's also good to know that you guys are offering that free tech support and National Grid's fleet plans that they're offering, because we're seeing a lot of communities with interest in that. So I think maybe making a connection with those communities as we hear from them will be good. One of our communities that Haley Belkanoff, who's also on this call, she's an outreach coordinator, works with Clifton Park, and they just use the National Grid program to get a fleet inventory free study, and that was really successful, and they're excited about that. I think they're looking to install some charging stations and just generally get an idea of how to make the transition for their fleet. So that was successful. And then also the truck voucher incentive program, the newest round of that program, or the newest round of the CEC program basically includes heavy duty vehicles, which it didn't include for the first round. So a lot of communities aren't aware, but and mainly just there wasn't, I think, a lot of options for communities to make the heavy duty transition. So we're seeing more communities interested in that. And, Jacob, I'd love to be a part of those discussions or that outreach, because I think there's opportunity there for community about that program to learn more as you
Definitely
make that available. So
yeah, I can follow up with you offline, because I think that would be great to kind of hear from potentially the communities you're working with, if they're interested in this kind of specific education on it. I wanted to just quickly ask, what's so communities can get the clean energy community points for adopting heavy duty electric vehicles? Is that?
Yeah. So the first round of the program only offered points for like installing a charging station or purchasing a light duty vehicle. And this round they get more points for, they can get points for light duty vehicle, EV charging stations, but as well as that heavy duty vehicles. I think it's 300, 400 points maybe. There's a good chunk of points if they transition to that. And again, those can be leveraged for more grants. So it's something that NYSERDA's program is considering now.
Very good.
Yeah, and then the only other thing I wanted to mention was just something that we had emailed about, Jacob, which is just this like kind of issue that's popping up with communities that are installing EV charging stations and basically now having the grants been expended, whether it be the DEC ZEV rebates or the charge ready grants, they're dealing with these subscription fees that are going forward and trying to kind of figure out how to budget for those, whether they put that into their municipal budget and put it as kind of like a benefit, a public benefit, because they're not able to kind of make the charging fees high enough to pay for those, which are sometimes like $600 per port per year. So it's just this kind of issue that we're hearing a lot from communities. Some of them are like, let's, especially rural communities are thinking, well, we can't afford this. Like, let's just take out the station, which is definitely something we don't want. Maybe stations not being networked going forward. So just like them paying for the power and having it be kind of just a general level 2. So anyways, just something that's popped up that we're hearing a lot of and, hoping that we can continue that discussion down the road.
Yeah, and that's something, right? I mean, I've got it noted and I was hoping to try to get someone as a presentation today for that. I can really get a hold of anyone, but I think it's something that I'm going to keep on the list to kind of continue that discussion. I don't know, has anyone else on the call had that issue or have any kind of ways to overcome that?
I can say we talk to a lot of people out there putting in stations all the time, and we haven't heard that one direct. Well, I personally haven't heard someone say that quite yet. But I am not shocked by that, and I'm sort of interested to hear what you guys are hearing. So please keep passing that along, because we are trying to have these conversations in the most like open way about kind of the costs that will come your way. We are trying to think about the way to kind of talk about whether or how much utility bills will kind of go up to, depending on what rate class someone starts in. If they end up having to, go up a rate class, sometimes it can be more than expected. So we're thinking about these sort of things a lot too. So I don't have a solution really, except my initial thought is always that I suspect very soon there'll be a lot more drivers and then a lot more revenue. And so that cost will be covered more easily, but we might just not quite have hit that point yet and enough EVs out there.
Yeah, Kate, that's super helpful. And I think that it's just generally that, it's more of like just a cost projection for these communities as I think about installing them. And this could be for businesses as well, as thinking about, you install it now, here's the cost, but like here would be your annual cost going forward. And here, like you said, the rates and things like that, especially if they, another question that came up was how do I get transferred to like a demand rate? Like what would not that they want to, but like what does the usage have to be basically to get bumped to that rate? And they just, don't know these things. And I think a planning process for that would be useful. So
the tough part about the rates is that the answer is always it depends, and it depends a lot on a lot of details. So it's a very hard thing to say anything widely about the answer to that question, but maybe we should talk more offline about this sort of communication and how to talk to people about that, and just be continuously in any communications about what we hear. One other thing I'll say I do hear sometimes is some installers, some of the more turnkey ones, will offer kind of like 5 years of those fees up front, so that it's covered for a while, which can then take care of at least the initial getting used to having chargers time frame.
Yeah, I think that's what happened is many of them used the grants maybe 3 years ago, and now they paid for them all up front, and then now they're like, wait, hold on, what's this fee? And I'm like, oh, well, you paid it, but it was part of your grant, so you probably didn't notice the line item. So it's a little bit of a shocker, but yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, let's talk going forward about ways we can message or help communities and anybody else think about this. So
excellent.
I'm thinking about this more and like going back to some of the work under our contract and those listening sessions, now that DOE has kind of allowed us to open that up into, it's supposed to be towards like fleets that haven't adopted a technology yet, but I actually think that a listening session on a topic like this, where we could get a lot of those folks in the same room to just talk through the issues that they're having, and potentially some folks that maybe have that issue or don't have that issue for a particular reason. So maybe a listening session to go over kind of EV charging subscription fees might be a good opportunity for the future. So we can definitely talk about that more, Tara.
Great.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else have anything to chime in? I'm hearing none. That's essentially the end of our meeting today. I've got a couple links to some current EV infrastructure and alternative fuel infrastructure resources here. Link to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law website, where there's a lot of good information on what's going to be coming down the pipeline on that. Obviously, our truck voucher incentive program, registration to our Earth Day event in April, as well as the new EPA Clean School Bus Program website, which will also have some funding tied to the new infrastructure law. Obviously, you guys can't click on these links, but we'll be sending out the presentation hopefully next week, and we've got meeting minutes to come as well, and hopefully posting this on the website within the next week as well. So looking to get this information back out to all of you. And with that, I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. And that's all I have. So thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. Great job, Jacob.
Thanks, Jason.